Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Salton Sea Authority for Thursday, March 23rd, 2023. I would like to call this meeting to order. Would like to start by asking Director Dockstetter to lead us in the pledge.
Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would like to remind everybody up here on the dais that in order for those attending via Zoom to hear what we are saying, our microphones must be on. So don't forget to turn them on when speaking, or you can leave them on all the time. It's your choice. Same goes for public comment. The microphones must be displaying the green light. Madam Secretary, can you please take a roll call?
Chairman Placarte,
Yes?
Director Kelly, Co-Chairs Matianas, Director Tortes,
Present.
Secretary Estrada, Director Aguilar,
Here.
Treasurer Cardenas,
Good morning, present.
Director Dockstader,
present.
Director Perez, Director Gutierrez, and actually Director Gutierrez will be attending the LAFCO meeting. He'll attend soon after. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't believe that I heard anybody speak on Zoom. As far as their attendance, I just want to make sure that we are able to hear them.
I heard Chairman Tortes.
You
say
heard
he's
him?
present, yeah.
Okay. All right. And can we get rid of that banner on the screen?
We were
up there?
working on that.
Working on it. Okay. Having working through some technology issues, we will now go on to public comments. This public comment portion is reserved for comments on any agenda. I'm sorry, let me restart that. This public comment time is reserved for comments on any agenda item that is not included under section 4 of the matters on the agenda. You are invited to speak to any specific action item listed in the agenda at the time it is called. All other items should be addressed at this time. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the authority's jurisdiction. Those present in this room who wish to speak, please fill out a request to speak form and provide it to the board secretary on your right. To comment via Zoom, use the raise hand feature on your phones by pressing *9 to be acknowledged. State your name for the record and address, and please address the chairman. Remarks shall be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes per individual and no more than 15 minutes per item. So do we have, I don't see anybody here for public comment as it relates to items not on the agenda. Madam Secretary, do we have any hands up on Zoom for public comment for items not on the agenda?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
I think we may have one coming.
I'm sorry. We do have 5 hands. Jasmine Phillips.
Okay, Jasmine Phillips, you may speak.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Phillips. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I just wanted to express appreciation for the meeting that the Salton Sea Authority representative had on March 16th with the community regarding the Desert Shores Restorations Channel project. And we hope that moving forward to get regular project updates. Thank you very much.
We have Nathan White.
Mr. White, go ahead.
Hi, thank you, everyone, board members and everybody in attendance here. I appreciate all the hard work everyone's putting in and all the leadership that we see from Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Pancarte, as well as Mr. O'Dowd. Just wanted to comment really quickly. In the last California Natural Resources Agency meeting, we asked for some updates and some direction, as well as just communication and outreach, and still haven't really received much on some of the water import and non-water import proposals that we had made and some of their findings. We kind of had to go through a PRA with UC Santa Cruz to try and get information around their fatal flaw review. But my question, comment, and request here today is I'd like to just ask formally if the Salton Sea Authority and the member agencies would help in advancing to the Army Corps of Engineers, all of the proposed projects for water import and non-water import, not just the ones that UC Santa Cruz or the Long Range Planning Committee of California Natural Resources Agency have deemed credible, complete, or feasible. So I'd like to just request that the Salton Sea Authority can advance all projects, because I believe that the Army Corps of Engineers is looking more subjectively at the project approaches. If there would be interest, I would greatly appreciate a letter of support from the Salton Sea Authority for that purpose, specific to our South Lake demonstration and our Tres Matas water import project, if that's possible. We could talk about that later, but just wanted to ask that. Hopefully the Army Corps of Engineers is looking at projects objectively and looking at the possible benefits south of the border, as well as for the whole Colorado River Basin and the different member agencies that can benefit from the projects that we're trying to advance, but also some of the other ones that were maybe deemed infeasible, and maybe just looking at that process. So thank you so much for everybody's time, attention, and I appreciate everybody's involvement and support and management. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. White.
Next, we have Cedric Farmer.
Mr. Farmer, go ahead. Mr. Farmer, you are unmuted. You may start your public comment. Madam Secretary, let's go on to the next person.
Director Gutierrez.
Hi, can you hear me?
We do.
Okay, no, I just, I should be like, I think on the panel, as a panelist, it has me like in public comments.
I just moved you over.
Okay, great, thank you. So I was here in the beginning. Thank you.
No, no. I believe
Nathan,
that's
can you
all.
go ahead and put your hand down?
Oh, yeah, she's about to.
Other than Mr. Farmer, Mr. Chairman, I think, no, we have Tom Sefton.
Tom Sefton.
Mr. Sefton? you're on.
Hello, great. Hello, board. Thank you. I wish to echo Ms. Phillips' comments. Thank you, Executive Director O'Dowd and Director Kelly for meeting with the Oversight Committee at Desert Shores last week. And the project grant has been in place for a year, just getting started on it. And echoing Jasmine Phillips' comments, we would like to suggest that there should be a short update to the board at each meeting. It doesn't have to take more than 5 minutes, but we would like Director Dowd or any staff member to update both the board and the public on the status of the Desert Shores project at each meeting so that you know where it's, what the progress is and how it's moving, and representing the residents and property owners. We look forward to working with Salton Sea Authority staff and moving this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepard.
Jose Barrera,
I think Mr. Farmer is unmuted too. You might want to mute him. And Mr. Barrera is muted.
Mr. Barrera, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning, members of the board. My name is Jose Barrera, and I am the State Director for the California League of United Latin American Citizens, LULAC, which is the oldest and largest Latino civil rights organization across the country. I'm participating here today to support your entry in a definitive agreement with the Torres Martinez Tribe, Cadiz, and the Coachella Valley Water District that will allow the authority to access new water, innovative water technology, and important resources for the tribal and majority Latino disadvantaged communities surrounding the Salton Sea. With over 130,000 members, LULAC's mission is to advance the economic condition, educational attainment, political influence, housing, health, and civil rights of Hispanic Americans throughout community-based programs operating with over 1,000 councils nationwide. In 2009, LULAC's National Assembly passed an environmental justice resolution committing the organization to fight for access to clean water and air and food. This particularly pertains to the Coachella Valley and the area surrounding the Salton Sea, who has been plagued with these types of issues and face unfair, unjust, unburdened shivering water and air quality inequities, which are common in California.
Public view. I don't know if you want to sign in with yours.
I'm on.
Okay.
Thank you. So over 2 million people in the US do not have access to safe, clean, and affordable water, many of which live in majority Latino communities. For example, the counties where Latinos make up over 25% of the population, water systems violate drinking water contaminations rules at a rate of deaths 2 times higher than the rest of the country. Climate change also disproportionately harms the US Latino population, which lives in areas facing severe weather, extreme heat, air pollution, water pollution, environmental degradation, and forest mitigation. To improve outcomes, we must modernize our infrastructure and pursue innovative opportunities, including the Cadiz Water Project. Even with an abundance of rain falling this year in California, the Colorado River conditions are not expected to significantly improve. As the Colorado River delivers into the Imperial Valley, inevitably decline, it is critical for agencies like the authority to continue to pursue all solutions that will avoid further devastation in the Salton communities. LULAC applauds you for putting the people in your communities first and taking an important step in securing supplemental water from Cadiz. LULAC has supported the Cadiz project. It is an innovative opportunity for California to address water inequities and climate change impacts on our established water systems. The people of the Salton Sea have carried the burden of contaminated water and poor air quality for far too long. We applaud you for your action to execute a contract and provide access to new water storage and technology that will be life-sustaining in the communities surrounding the Salton Sea. Thank you.
Thank you. And just a reminder that this is public comment for items not on the agenda. The particular item addressed is an item on the agenda. So if you have comments for items not on the agenda, this is the time to do it. Do we have any other comments? We'll give one last chance to Mr. Farmer.
Mr. Farmer.
Mr. Farmer, you're unmuted. You may start. Okay, apparently not there or having technical difficulties, so we will go on. We'll continue with our agenda. Please note that yeah, that's what you should have turned it in before. Oh,
It's okay.
is that for an item on the agenda? Okay, go ahead. Miss, push the red button at the bottom of the microphone so it turns green. Thank you.
Okay, can you guys hear me? Is it good?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. Good morning, Chair and board members and public. My name is Lillian Garcia and I'm with United for Justice. I just want to quickly, give a shout out to my colleagues, Jasmine Phillips, Mr. Tom Sefton, and Mr. White that are on Zoom. And I want to also echo their concerns. I am here today because I am respectfully requesting for each of you to consider seeking funds for indoor air purifiers for residents that are residing within the Salton Sea. Unfortunately, the Natural Resources Agency staff, Mr. Mario Llanos, stated in public that funds could not be used for indoor air purifiers. As y'all may know, the order does state on 2017-0134 that they are to protect public health. As many of you might not be aware, but the community's public health issues have not been addressed regardless of the amount of funding being allocated for the past 2 to 3 decades. Even though Monday statements were made by local representatives, and I will just state this for the record, I hope none of you say this in public because I did receive many complaints from residents, from community advocates stating that why are they stating on a press saying that they have addressed the public health issue. So I'm here today just to also add that the Region 7 has also non-complied with the Clean Water Act 303 Section D for 31 years within the Salton Sea and its tributaries. And I hope you guys take into consideration to learn a little bit more about that because it is affecting our water quality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, being no additional public comments, we will go on to board member comments. This is a time set aside for members of the board to share their thoughts and concerns regarding the authorities matters not on the agenda. Any questions of staff and request items may be added on the agenda at a future date. Just as a informational item, the Brown Act expressly prohibits lengthy board member discussion on matters not on the agenda. The board may act at its discretion by a 4/5 vote to add an item if so needed. So with that, we will go to board member comments. We'll start to my right with board member Dockstader.
The only comment that I have at this point is that I didn't receive the board agenda packet. So, that was emailed. So when it comes to discussion and actions, I will abstain. And then the previous month before, I received it maybe 24 hours in advance. So I'm not sure what the protocol is, but I would assume it would go out sooner than that. Is that
Okay.
correct? So maybe there's something wrong with my email. I just want to bring
We'll
attention
take
to
a
that.
look at that.
Thank you very much.
So noted. Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to ask if we could at some point get an update on the Senate bill that was mentioned at the last meeting regarding the establishment of the conservatory and maybe our states.
Sir, your time is, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that was only a minute. If we could get an update on that, perhaps our state advocate would mention something.
Okay, information is forthcoming.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cardenas.
Yeah, I would actually join, good morning, I would actually join in the director's comments in terms of understanding SB 583. I know that we have a sitting director, Supervisor Perez, who was instrumental in passing AB 71, which establishes norms and roles and responsibilities in terms of the CRNA working with the Salton Sea Authority. And then now the introduction of SB 583. So I'm not sure how that brings alignment to AB 71. I know that the Salton Sea Authority has been working diligently from an advocacy perspective to ensure that projects are getting done. So I do join in the director's comments in terms of better understanding where SB 583 is going and how that aligns with Assembly Bill number 71, which was authored by Supervisor Perez. So I would like to see that on the agenda in terms of discussion, and then also making sure that we are provided a forum to address anything related to the Salton Sea. Also want to acknowledge and welcome the filling of a vacancy position, the Assistant Secretary position at CRNA after 8 months of vacancy. that position appears to be filled. I'm still anxiously waiting to see the press release. But it appears that Secretary Crowfoot was media inquiry was made to him during the governor's visit, and he did acknowledge that that position is being filled after numerous months of my inquiries about that position. Wasn't receiving any responses or updates, but nonetheless, I do welcome that that position has been filled, and maybe to Mr. White's comments and Ms. Phillips and Mr. Stepton, that's a person that we could definitely make these inquiries to and ensure that these projects are getting done. So with that being said, again, just want to ask that we do address SB 583 and how it aligns with AB 71. Thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Director Cardenas. We will now go to those attending via Zoom. Director Gutierrez, any comments?
No comments today.
Thank you. Director Torres.
Yes, thank you. Thank you there, President. I would just want to say that I was present at and invited to the lithium press conference a few days ago, and I know some of the other directors may have been there, some of the other community members and just people of Imperial there at the lithium roundtable. The governor was here, or there at the CTR lithium extraction point, and we did a press conference, and I think it was more of in line of support for the lithium extraction. But when I spoke, I just wanted to remind, everyone there, as I will here, that, the tribes, not just Torres Martinez, but all tribes in the local area are an integral part of any development or economic opportunities that are here. So again, it was just my reiteration that the tribes are here. We are part of the system, and not to forget the cultural concerns of all tribes, especially when it comes to the huge development that lithium is about to endeavor, in that area. I just wanted to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Torres. Director Perez. Good morning. sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we do.
All right, let me lower my hand here. I think there was some great comments that were made earlier this morning already by constituents as well as my colleagues. I do agree with constituent about making sure that we continue updates on an ongoing basis. Desert Shores, I think, is that the area that we're speaking about. I think that's important, not only there, but just overall. Those updates, I think, would be great for Desert Shores, as well as the North Shore pilot project, and as well every effort that's going on in the south end of the sea in Imperial County. I think is important as well. So I just want to put that plug in to create a little bit more work for you, Patrick. But nonetheless, though, it's important, and I think it makes good sense. There was an individual, a young lady that spoke around indoor air care fires. I don't know exactly what that means, but let's follow up with her, and let's make sure we take care of that, whatever that may be, even if that's for the long term. SB 583, it's already been brought up by my colleagues. I don't necessarily know what that means either. I think it is important that we have that discussion through the Salton Sea Authority, knowing that SB 71 does exist and we are the authority, but potentially maybe it could make sense. I don't know, but I think we just gotta be open about it and listen and see how this conservancy might actually work or not, and be open about it and be transparent. Not sure who approached the senator on this effort. What for? Maybe I heard that it seems like the Salton Sea Authority is kind of like churning its wheels. That might be the case. Sometimes we all get frustrated, and it feels like we're not accomplishing what we need to to advance the efforts of mitigating and restoring the Salton Sea overall. But nonetheless, though, I want to make sure that we have that open-aired conversation with true transparency. So I look forward to that conversation. And then the last point, there was an individual that talked about Cadiz. I don't see it on the calendar, I mean, on the agenda here. It didn't say Cadiz here at all. I'm sure it's probably hidden in here somewhere. So we're going to talk about Cadiz, let's just name it as it is. And quite frankly, as the individual that spoke about that, you know, we all here on this dais are in the best interest of all our constituents. We all know that the North Shore, those folks that live in Bombay Beach, those folks that live in Desert Shores, have struggled and suffered the most around the Salton Sea. We don't neglect that. We all are here because we believe in public service and we care. So there's not necessarily a right or wrong here. We all know that Salton Sea is shrinking. Potentially, Cadiz can help support the effort to increase water levels at the Salton Sea. Don't know. I mean, we have to get into that conversation. So I just want to mention out loud to folks out in the community that, you know, ultimately, we're here as your local representatives that are trying to hold the state accountable, that we're trying to hold the federal government accountable to what was promised, 25, 30 years ago. And we're partners in this effort. You know, we're not against you. And we need to figure out ways as to how we can work better together in partnership. So I just want to put that out loud as well to our colleagues and our friends in the community throughout the Salton Sea and Imperial County, Riverside County. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Perez. Are there any directors that may have joined, which I missed to call online?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. We will now go on to special presentations. We will go ahead and listen to a presentation by Dr. Lowe. Mr. O'Dowd, would you like to tee this one up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have been asked, and that Dr. Lowe has been pursuing grant fundings to conduct a study regarding to some issues that he's been working on at the sea. I believe that Assembly Member Garcia has some legislation that relates in some fashion to this effort. I think it's part of a broader spectrum of issues with respect to human health and safety at and around the sea, and I thought it would be useful for this board and the community to receive a presentation for Dr. Lowe, and I invited him to speak here today. So Dr. Lowe, if you want to share your screen, you're welcome to do that, and the microphone is yours.
Okay, thanks very much for inviting me to give this presentation. I'm David Lowe. I'm a professor of biomedical sciences in the UC Riverside School of Medicine. And of course, one of the important missions of the School of Medicine is to focus on the health of the community that we're serving. And the research that we're doing is very much along those lines. I'm going to briefly give a presentation on the research we're doing on the impacts of the air quality at the Salton Sea and the need for a detailed epidemiology study so we can sort of get a sense for where we are in terms of the health impacts and also to be able to monitor ongoing mitigation projects specifically for their impacts on health. So this is a brief overview here. We are well aware in the community that there's a significant impact of the air quality in promoting the high incidence of childhood asthma in the region. As a health disparities notion, this is severely impacting especially communities of the Mexican immigrant communities of farm workers and so on. And so the issue that we have begun to look at is the idea that the asthma may be tied directly to the dust being produced at the playa, the exposed lake bed at the Salton Sea. And I'll get into a little bit more detail in a minute. But our initial conclusions for the work that we're still doing is that the dust that is being produced specifically close to the Salton Sea does have a potent biological impact in inducing lung inflammatory responses. And it may be a consequence of the changing ecology at the Salton Sea. And those are the kinds of studies we are pursuing right now. And I'll talk about a little bit of that. So as you all are well aware, that the dust levels near the Salton Sea are higher than in a lot of places around the state. And in fact, they seem to even be higher than some of the arid desert areas surrounding the Salton Sea further away. As the sea retreats, it exposes additional lake bed, and these seem to be important in sources of the dust emissions. Now, the point that we are studying is the fact that not all dust is the same. There is dust in various parts and arid areas. And the question is whether or not the Salton Sea playa dust is particularly important in terms of the impact on health in the communities that live near the shoreline and breathing the dust. To give a little bit of background, asthma, we all know it's a chronic inflammatory disease of the lung. It causes constricted airways, wheezing and coughing and things like that. Many causes asthma are in the environment. So for example, in urban areas where people live near, in the cities and as well as near freeways, or people in industrial settings can also be exposed to different types of dust that can produce symptoms that are look like asthma. And so that's why one of the issues is whether or not the disease symptoms that we're seeing at the Salton Sea fall into a specific pattern or something that we need to examine in greater detail. I apologize for a brief medical school instruction slide to give you an idea of why we think this is an important subject for further study is that, as I said, there are a number of things that can cause asthma, and there are different things that can cause inflammation in the lungs. So, for example, if you have bacterial infections, you can get an immune response that can be a rapid response that we call an innate response. And then there are the things that are more immune responses that relate to antigens and things like that we call adaptive immune responses. Now, the contrast between these is important because asthma, in most settings, in wherever you are in the country, most kids with asthma have allergies. And so that is an adaptive response and less likely to be produced by bacteria. And so most pediatricians, when they see kids wheezing and so on, will assume they have the more conventional type of asthma and then just give them anti-inflammatory inhalers and things like that. The question we are asking is whether or not this is just as true for residents living near the Salton Sea. So what we've done is to look at the dust. We have a team of collaborators at the university where we develop these exposure chambers, and we can take laboratory mice and expose them to the aerosols from materials we collected around the Salton Sea as well as further away, and to see what happens. So this is a sampling of some of the collection sites that we've used, both at the both in Imperial Valley as well as North Shore, as well as Salton City and other areas around the Salton Sea, as well as sites further away, for example, above in the desert above Palm Desert. And so we had originally expected, because of the high incidence of asthma, that we would see allergic disease in the mice that were exposed to these aerosols. But to our surprise, what we saw instead was what we call an innate inflammatory response that's more characteristic of a bacterial, a response to things like bacterial components. And this was, as I said, quite a surprise, but we saw this consistent pattern from dust materials collected both at the north and southern ends of the Salton Sea. So it seemed to be unique to the dust produced at the exposed playa. This is just a picture of some of the data that we're generating from these exposures. And other characteristics of the response in these lab studies do confirm some of this aspect of that shows similarity to bacterial component type responses, where you have a more rapid acute response that slowly starts to decay later on. But basically the message here is that it is clearly not what we expected in terms of an allergic inflammatory response, but it looks like the kind of response that you would have if you were inhaling various kinds of bacterial microbial components. And the reason that is of relevance here is that if we thought that there was a specific cause attributable to the Salton Sea, we can think in terms of the ecosystem at the Salton Sea, where the dust may be produced from a couple of different sources, just for example, the sea spray from the water or the exposed playa, or even desert soils and things like that. But the Salton Sea is a unique ecosystem in that it has, as kind of an agricultural sump, it sort of has a runoff that has a relatively high nutrient burden from the fertilizer from the agriculture activity. And this actually promotes growth of algae and bacteria in the water of the Salton Sea, which then, of course, overuses the oxygen in the water. And then, all of that overgrows and dies. And you have this basically a soup of microbial material in the water, which we are interested in the question of whether that material is being drawn up into the playa and pulling into the dust that's being produced there. And that may be an important component of the dust that may contribute to the inflammatory responses in the lungs of people who are living close to the exposed playa. So the studies that we're doing now, we were able to get a congressional earmark funding from Congressman Vargas's district to study this question of how dust gets pulled into the air and whether or not microbial components or similar components are actually part of the dust at that playa. Now, the relevant question then is, if we are looking at a situation where the dust that are being pulled into the air are potentially inflammatory or toxic, how does this put us in the context of all the other types of hazards we need to consider in that region? And as you have probably seen, there are a lot of different types of assessments that are used. Cal EnviroScreen, for example, other kinds of environmental hazards, and so on. And often these are more generalized summaries of a lot of different things. For example, pesticides, the heavy metals that are in the chemistry of the region, air quality, water quality, and so on. So a lot of things are summaries of integrating all these different factors, but they're not necessarily specific to this question of air quality and risk for pulmonary disease, especially asthma. So although there may be multiple factors, one of the questions that are really of importance to us and importance to the families that we've been working with is, how does this relate to which factors are going to have an impact on their kids who are showing symptoms of asthma? And so we may be able to do studies looking at wind patterns, seasonal changes, things like that. We can look at the distribution of particulate matter, large, small particulate matter, and things like that. However, as I said, it may be that not all dust is the same, and that the dust generated at the Salton Sea may have particular impacts in the biology of people who are breathing that. And so part of what we need to know is, does that dust have particularly potent impacts in certain regions or certain populations living close to the Salton Sea? For example, depending on things like which way the wind is blowing, what are the seasonal conditions, the effects of drought, and so on. So we can look at what's in the public data, public health data sets. There are a number of these out there. HARC is a Coachella Valley nonprofit organization that does health assessment surveys. And at large levels, large areas, large tracts, we like, for example, zip codes or county level, we have some general idea that the incidence of asthma is in fact higher than the rest of the state of California, but it doesn't give us the real detailed information to know which neighborhoods may be some more severely impacted, how close they are to different types of sources of dust, especially things like exposed playa. And so if we take into consideration the fact that as the Salton Sea retreats, there are some areas where more playa is exposed than in others. And so the actual mechanisms by which the dust is produced and the way it may be pulling material like microbial material from the water are all things that need more understanding. So at least we can identify a couple of factors, such as if this is not a conventional allergic asthma, it may be something different, which means we may understand it in different ways, as well as lead to different ways of actually medically treating kids with the symptoms that we're seeing. So the argument then is that we need a more comprehensive and detailed study on the epidemiology and distribution of the symptoms all around the Salton Sea area, which neighborhoods are in fact impacted, seasonal changes, and try to correlate with what we know about the conditions at the local playa exposure and things like that. And so this is going to be very important because this will give us a better idea of where the symptoms are more severe geographically. And so we may be able to focus our health needs on those areas, as well as try to identify what is different about the dust in those particular regions. Another important aspect of this is to be able to do ongoing monitoring and assessments of those components that we think are having the most important health impacts, so that we can look at whether there's any specific benefits of the various mitigation projects that are ongoing in the region. So these various projects are located at different places around the Salton Sea, so we may be able to actually correlate directly the impacts of those specifically on the health of the neighboring communities. So that's the, let's see. Okay, so there's my presentation, and I'm happy to answer questions now, or you can always feel free to contact me later. I'm at the UC Riverside School of Medicine.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Do we have any questions or comments from members of this body? Anybody online with questions or comments, members of this body?
Not at this time.
Director Perez, I think you were unmuting yourself.
Yeah, I'd like to just raise a quick question here. I'm on two meetings at once, unfortunately, and I'm trying to hear both conversations, if you can actually do that. But nonetheless, though, I appreciate the presentation. You know, I think the very first question is going to come at us once again, like it always does, is the area around another study. All right, and so I think it's going to be important that we provide the statement of need, like you just did, Doctor. I think that was great, and we need to make sure that we provide that information, that those data points, that message to our constituents, because it's critical that they also understand this point as we're trying to mitigate and restore the Salton Sea. It's been discussed in the past in Riverside County, perhaps in Imperial County as well, around youth having asthma at a higher level, or nosebleeds at a higher level than other schools within the CBUSD school district. And so hopefully this study can help the Riverside County Public Health Department better understand what we can do to support our families and constituents in that area. But nonetheless, so I think it's going to be important, colleagues and doctor, that we are able to provide a message as to why another study. And being able to break that down in 1 minute in simple terms. So I just want to put that out there for you. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your comments. I think there are basically two answers to the question, why do we need the study? Number one is that we do not have any studies on the actual clinical disease that these kids are suffering from. So do we know that they have a, vanilla, boring asthma that everybody else across the country gets, and you just hand them an inhaler and think that's going to help? Now, families will tell you that, the kids are not getting better. They continue, just putting on a mask is not going to be enough protection. So we need to understand the disease better to know whether or not, in fact, it is a different kind of disease. And if it's directly attributed to some kind of toxicity in the dust, we would need to know that, because then we need to know that so we can better treat the kids who have these symptoms. That's number one. Number two answer is that, if tens, hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested in mitigation projects on the idea that it may reduce dust burden in the region, we need to know if those mitigation projects are really making sense, because if the ultimate goal of those mitigation projects is to benefit the health of the communities, if we don't do monitoring of the actual health of the communities, then we don't know whether that investment is actually directed in the right way. So those would be my two answers to those things. Why do we need these kinds of studies and continued monitoring?
Well, thank you, Dr. Lowe, for your response, and obviously we'll support the effort. I think Eduardo has done great work for us. And by the way, I'm a UCR alumni. And so I definitely support your efforts, UCR School of Medicine. Let's just figure out how we can make sure that we address folks succinctly with data on point, with a single message that makes sense for folks on the ground. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Pettis. Go ahead. Please turn on the microphone. There we go.
Luis Olmedo, I'm the Executive Director of Comité Cívico del Valle. We've been operating in Imperial Valley for nearly 35 years. And matters of community health have been very important. We have been part of many research studies. And I think by 2015, it's very clear that we had studied the Salton Sea to death. In 2008, we did an asthma prevalence study. We know that we have higher asthma percentages, 3 times more in comparison to the state, in comparison to the rest of the nation. In all these years, we have learned about, what is the best type of studies that help our community. And the best type of studies is those studies that develop research questions that help respond to our crisis in this case, whatever that crisis may be, whether it's COVID, whether it's asthma, whether it's cancer, whether it's the Salton Sea. Over the years, research has also evolved. We can't just continue to spend dollars and providing opportunities to do the publish or perish approach, the traditional academic approach to science and data. We have real problems. We're dealing with a climate crisis here in our own community, right? And look, out of respect to the science and research, that's fine, but there's models that approach it from research to action. Research that provides us answers as to how to resolve the health crisis that we face. Research that helps us develop technologies, mitigation efforts to help address the crisis that is here right now. I don't think we need to continue to hear that we have more asthma. We just had a recent death on the north end in your district, Supervisor Kelly, because we don't have healthcare centers there. There's a bill right now that is, again, and I don't doubt the UCR, maybe not. I'm still a little bit shocked as to how there was a lot of cherry picking of literature reviews to tell their narrative around the lithium. I'm still in shock of how easily research can really tell our story and decide our future, whether it's for workforce development, whether it's for public health. We need to make sure that these research studies and these research questions are responding to our community's needs, whether it's here in Imperial Valley, whether it's in Coachella. We need to make sure that this is done with the community, not for the community. I guess the simple answer is yes, we have an enormous amount of asthma, and we need to have life-saving devices in the schools. That's the kind of policy that we need and the kind of research that we need. Thank you for a reminder of time. And the very one, I'm just going to repeat it. We need healthcare centers, right? And we need to be able to afford the community the ability to have. But anyways, the urgent matter here is we need to put projects on the ground. That's it. We need to stabilize Salton Sea, mitigate Salton Sea. And again, and I'm sorry I'm taking so much, but I just want to close at saying that I'm not necessarily against research. We participate in research, but if I understood Supervisor Perez, I mean, I think that we want to see solutions, and I encourage UCR to think about how they approach research. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Olmedo.
So I wanted to thank Director Almeida for his comments. I mean, we've actually had this discussion recently. I think one of the points I was trying to make in this presentation is that if the disease that we're seeing in the kids in the region is not traditional asthma, my worry is that we are not treating the kids correctly to address the disease they actually have. So in that respect, I'm not going to argue that what drew us to this question is an established known high incidence of asthma. The question being, though, from the point of view as physician, are we serving the community correctly by just simply handing them an inhaler, not knowing that we're treating the correct disease? And that's why I think the research we're doing already gave us some surprises, suggesting that this is not the same disease every pediatrician thinks it is, and that it may mean that we need to understand it better so that we may give them the correct therapies, the correct medications, or other kinds of treatments that really address the disease they actually have. And so I would like to see that have an impact on the health in the community, and that's why we're here. It's not about just coming up with publications. It's about how do we serve the community, improve the health, and that's the mission of the school. So I would, whether this relates to larger questions or whether or not, as I said, the mitigation projects are also addressing the health needs of the community. If we're just simply measuring dust but not measuring impacts on health, then again, we're not maybe focusing the efforts in the right way.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Very informative. We will go on to our next item, which is agenda item number 5. We will look at the consent calendar, items A 1 through 4. These will be acted upon one single motion and one single action. Before we do, I will open up general public comments. And I believe I have some here. We will start with Monica Grijalva.
Hello, good morning. My name is Monica Galvez. I live in Mecca.
I'm sorry. I apologize for reading your last name.
That's okay. Part of field, and I believe water is a human right. Too often we overlook the needs of the communities of color, causing health disparities and limited access to basic human rights. We argue to approve of A4. Action A4, sorry.
Thank you. Aiden Galarza.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon, Mr. O'Dowd, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Perez on the line, my name and the rest of the board. My name is Adonis Galarza. I am here representing the Farm Worker Institute of Educational Leadership and Development as the Environment and Water Conservation Manager. And for ID purposes, I also serve on the Coachella Valley Unified School District Board of Education as the president of the board. I am part of, I joined Field to ensure that marginalized communities have a voice and to advocate for a better quality of life for the surrounding communities of the Salton Sea. With that being said, we thank you all and thank the board for their focus on the future and for the consideration to approve item A4 that will expand the water supply through environmentally and sound project. We thank you for your support for the projects like Cadiz and projects that expand storage, transfer, and develop new sources of water and do so in an equitable fashion. I thank you and encourage this board to continue to act with our future in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Alma Sanchez.
Buenos días. Mi nombre es Alma Sánchez. Vengo de Brole, California. Yes. Me uní a FIO para asegurar que las comunidades marginales tengan voz. Esto es un beneficio para nuestra comunidad, pues por lo que está viendo de las enfermedades. Los invitamos a seguir apoyándonos. Agradezco y gracias.
Gracias, thank you. Alondra Lara.
Hola, buenos días. Mi nombre es Alondra Lara. Yo vengo de la ciudad de Brole, California. La decisión de hoy es el futuro de mañana. Por eso me uní a la corporación de Field para asegurar que las comunidades marginadas tengan voz. Con demasiada frecuencia se colocan otras prioridades sobre el bienestar de las comunidades de color. Gracias por este acto compasivo de asegurar un trato de agua, suministros de agua a la Autoridad del Mar de Salton y la tribu Torres Martínez. Esto es algo muy beneficioso para nuestra comunidad. Los instamos a continuar a proyectos como el proyecto Cadiz, que amplian el nacimiento, transfieren y desarrollan nuevas fuentes de agua y lo hacen de manera equitativa. Agradezco y animo a esta junta a continuar actuando con nuestro futuro en mente. Muchas gracias por su atención.
Gracias a usted, thank you. David Villarino.
Chairman Pancarte, members of the Board of Directors, staff. My name is David Villarino, and I am the President and CEO of the Farm Workers Institute of Education and Leadership Development, founded by Cesar Chavez in 1978. And I'm here to speak on behalf in favor of approving section A4, item A4. I want to commend the board for taking the initial steps in approving the MOU. That includes the Torres Martinez tribe, Cadiz. You know, the provision about non-tributary water to the Salton Sea Authority is really important. And I'm here to speak in favor of that, as I mentioned before. Our purpose at Field is to empower the underserved to be self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency, in our view, means economic and social prosperity. When you think about social prosperity, you're thinking about the health of the community. And we just had a beautiful presentation about what that means. When you think about economic prosperity, you're also thinking about where are investments being made. And there's a weird kind of analogy here that I want to just bring to bear. There's a lot of flooding going on in the state in farm worker communities because of the atmospheric rivers. And the reason that took place was because officials specifically the Army Corps of Engineers, they knew for the last 20 years that these berms were insufficient to hold back the water. As they did a cost benefit analysis, and they determined that the cost of doing the repairs was the same cost as doing the repairs in San Francisco, even though they were farmer communities. And because they were farmer communities, they said, these are poor communities, therefore there's no benefit to it. And so they did not put forward the resources. And here you have it. And that's the analogy here. And that's why this MOU, in terms of the consent agenda item here, is important, because this takes a step to make sure that resources are being put in place so that the health and the economic well-being of the farmer communities specifically will bear fruit. This is a time where farmer communities and rural communities, immigrant communities have been suffering, have borne the brunt of things like COVID, the things like the drought, and specifically that drought has led to poisoned water, has led to dry wells. And now we have the issue here in the Salton Sea area and the Salton Sea communities of having what we're hearing today. And so our ability, Field's ability to partner with the Torres Martinez tribe and with Cadiz to be able to provide sources of water, clean water, will help to mitigate that. So we want to thank you very much for your time. We want to ask for your support to continue approving this consent agenda item. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Okay, be no more public comment on this item.
We have two online.
We have two online. Okay, I missed them on my screen.
Alex Zamora.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we do. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you so much. My name is Alex. I'm speaking on behalf of LAUNA, which is the Laborers International Union North America. And I'm here speaking this morning in support of this agreement with Cadiz, the Torres Martinez tribe, and the Coachella Valley Water District. This is going to open up an incredible amount of opportunities for the men and women in our union. Over 5,000 acre feet of water, pipeline infrastructure, and treatment technology for the Salton Sea and surrounding communities. That means a lot of the men and women on our out of work list or waiting for the next opportunity are going to have a chance to go work closer to home and not have to travel outside of the county lines. This is going to be meaningful hours for our young men and women in the union, meaningful opportunities for the people on the out of work list to get out there and make money to pay the bills, and also allow people from outside of construction an opportunity to get in with certain things like this. Not only that, but just the general pride in being able to do something like this so close to home, so meaningful to all the areas around. I just think that this is, a very good thing. And again, I'm speaking in support of this agreement, and I hope everyone can support it as well. Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, sir.
Jose.
Yes, good morning, Chair. Can you hear me?
I can, Jose. Before you get started, for the record, can you give us your last name as well?
My name is Jose Garcia, and I also am a proud member of the Laborers International Union of North America. The Cadiz project is an innovative water supply opportunity that will conserve water lost to evaporation and make it available to underserved communities across Southern California. Bringing the project online will also make a significant contribution to the local job market and economy. Development of the project's infrastructure will create 6,000 jobs. With Cadiz online, the Salton Sea area and the entire Southern California region will have a new option for water supply, storage, and important and much needed infrastructure. We urge you to keep moving forward and do all you can to get Cadiz up and running as soon as possible. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir.
Juan Serrata.
Mr. Serrato, you might start.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, members of the board. I am Juan Serrato, and I'm a proud member of the Laborers International Union of North America. I'm a proud member of this community. As a member of this community, we are concerned about the continuing decline of the Salton Sea, the impacts of the exposed lake bed on our air quality, and its negative impact on our members who live in the surrounding communities. We are also concerned about the poor groundwater quality in the area and the lack of access to the clean water. LAIUNA is supportive of the Salton Sea Authority's efforts to make infrastructure and environmental efforts that will benefit the local economy and support self-determination.
No, I'm not mad at you.
We urge you to
Mr.
keep
Zamora,
moving
can you
forward.
mute yourself, please?
We urge you to keep moving forward
Mr.
and
Serrato.
do all you can to get Cadiz up and running. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Serrato.
There are no other, actually, we have one more. Mr. Chairman, we have no other comments.
You have Mr. Stephen Belhumeur. Who is unmuted. Mr. Belhumeur, I believe you're muted now.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We hear you. Go ahead.
All right, very well. Good morning, directors. My name is Steve Belhumeur. I'm representing a group named Groundswell for Water Justice. We're part of a coalition that's deeply concerned about creating access to clean, affordable water. And so with that in mind, I'm calling in to ask you and urge you to adopt item 5A number 4. This is exactly the sort of project that will certainly benefit communities of color, which are more often than not overlooked. We want to thank you for your forward thinking as you consider this project, urge you to adopt it, and to continue to expand California's water supply through environmentally sound projects similar to this. So urging you to adopt this project and continue to look for ways to expand storage and new sources of water. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any additional?
No.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, did we have any questions or comments from members of this body before I entertain any motions?
Chairman, if I just may make one minor comment. Just on the February 23rd minutes, you have me listed as the County of Riverside. And I did proudly work for the County of Riverside for several years. I worked closely with Supervisor Perez, actually, but I'm actually, as you know, with CBWD. So if we can make that correction.
Thanks for pointing
Thank
that
you.
out.
Thank you.
Okay. So will that, I will entertain motions on the consent calendar, item 1.
Sure.
Mr. Perez?
Just very quickly, just a couple points I want to make. I appreciate obviously our labor leaders, our nonprofits on the ground. You have great representation there. From Adonis to Luis Olmedo to others that are part of Farm Worker Justice and Cadiz and LAIUNA. The one thing I want to bring up is, folks always bring up the issue of jobs and the economy, and obviously Imperial County, East Riverside County always struggles when it comes to economic development. I want to make sure though that moving forward, that Cadiz really makes a strong presence in ensuring that we have a large percentage of workers that are coming from Imperial County or from Riverside County for that matter. I think that's going to be critical. So in order for us to keep the dollars local. So I want to point that out to LAIUNA. who I am a strong supporter of, and they've supported me over the years. And I feel like I can say this in good faith because they've been my brothers and sisters for a long time. I also want to make the point that whenever we can buy products locally at the point of sale, so that that tax stays local, those monies stay within the fund of the Imperial County or Riverside County. Let's do that. As those developers are coming in, as those entities are coming in to build out Cadiz, I think that's going to be important. And once again, the community benefit. What is the community benefit overall at the end of the day from this project? Outside of obviously mitigating and restoring the Salton Sea, I get that. That's important overall. But I want to make sure that we are very specific and targeted as to how much funds, resources, a percentage is going to go back to Imperial County, potentially to Riverside County, so we can build parks, so that we can pave dusty roads, so we can have sidewalks for our kids as they're walking to school. So I'm going to put that out there because I think it's important. And obviously I support this project, but I think that needs to be stated. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Pettis. Any additional director comments?
If that's a motion from Supervisor Perez, or if he would like to memorialize it through a motion, I would second that.
I make the motion. Thank you, sir.
And I'll second that motion if there's no other discussion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, and we have additional comments.
I would ask that item 5A4 be pulled for discussion or action as it's on consent.
Okay, I am going to request clarification from council on that since we already have been. I don't know if that should have been done at the front versus.
Says, we do have. Correct, in terms of procedures, we do have a first and a second. We have a made motion at that point. It's the motion of the board. We would need a substitute motion to change the motion that's currently on the floor. So currently a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar in entirety. If somebody wants to substitute motion, we can make a motion. And we'll read a second on that to then make that then the main motion.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, would you like to make a substitute motion to the motion that's on the floor?
No, I won't drag this out. I definitely support Torres Martinez and availability of water, but I don't support drawing water from another location and creating a problem in another area to benefit another. So I wouldn't want that to happen to us, which is, and I don't want it to happen somewhere else. So Cadiz has been around a long time and I'm not in support of the project. So you can continue with Mr. Prez's motion and Mr. Kearney's second. I made my piece.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Okay, any additional comments? Being none, we have a motion, we have a second. Madam Clerk, will we go ahead and take a roll call vote, please, on items 5A, 1 through 4?
Chairman Pancarte,
Yes.
Director Kelly,
No.
Co-Chair Santianes,
I'll abstain.
By those deadlines of the code. Thank you very much.
Director Torres,
Yes.
Secretary Estrada, Director Aguilar,
Yes.
Treasurer Cardenas,
Yes.
Director Dockstader,
Abstain.
Director Perez,
Yes.
Director Gutierrez. Mr. Chairman, the motion has passed with 3 abstaining.
And that's for clarification, abstentions roll over to the majority vote. So to the extent somebody abstains on an item, that vote gets counted along with the majority. Since here the majority was a yes vote, abstentions, although they're noted abstentions, technically they're yes votes in support of the majority vote of the board. So, yes. I'll declare.
Lawyers.
So
That's
for
an- that-
clarification, item passes
With a very important footnote there.
with a footnote. Yeah,
No shields here.
All right, thank you. Going on the agenda, I'm going to take a chair's privilege and make a small change due to timing request. I would like to ask the Salton Sea Action Committee, Mr. Pace, to do his presentation before we go on to reports. Mr. Pace, are you available online?
I think he may already be gone, Mr. President.
Going once, going twice. Okay,
Mr. President, we will request that he submit his comments in writing and we'll publish them to the website.
thank you, sir. We will now go on to agenda item number 5B, guiding documents. This will be presented by Mr. O'Dowd.
Mr. President, I was expecting this would be a little bit briefer meeting, but I think it's been very substantive conversations that we're having. The next two items, I think, will fall in line with that. We do have two new members to the board. There have been some discussions in recent weeks about what are we here for? And I thought it would be helpful in both instances to reintroduce our foundational documents and then have a conversation about how do we oversee and analyze these challenges and opportunities that are before us. With respect to item number B, I've included on the website for your benefit and for the public's enjoyment, a copy of our joint powers agreement. It was approved by the Salton Sea Authority on June 30th, 1993. It means this year we will be 30 years old. We were created. Let me pull up my notes real quick. We were created to direct and coordinate actions relating to the improvement of water quality and stabilization of water elevation and to enhance recreational and economic development potential of the Salton Sea and other beneficial uses, recognizing the importance of the Salton Sea for the continuation of the dynamic agricultural economy in the Imperial and Riverside counties. And I would say, Mr. President, that, and members of the board, that through the authority's 5-member agencies, the authority is led by a 10-member board consisting of elected public officials from each agency and the tribe, representing every man, woman, and child in the Imperial and Coachella valleys. The functions of the authority are to undertake projects singularly or in cooperation with other agencies. And I would say that since the QSA was signed, it's been more the latter than the former, since the state has assumed principal responsibility for the restoration of the sea. But there's a variety of items on here that are referenced in the joint powers agreement, dealing with surface elevations, salinities, fish and wildlife, public recreation facilities and opportunities is expressly presented in our governing documents. Water quality issues, public health, the reduction or elimination of threats from public health and safety. And that goes to Dr. Lowe's conversation. I'm going to skip over and say that the next substantive document, which I have in your packet, which is the Salton Sea Restoration Act, or as it's more affectionately known by some around here and designated by law as the John J. Benoit Salton Sea Restoration Plan. John Benoit served on this board. He was a legislator and served this community for many years and has been active and involved in the Salton Sea. This is existing law. It embodies Assembly Bill 71 by then Assembly Member Perez, now Riverside County Supervisor and Salton Sea Authority Director Perez, which provides no less than that the Salton Sea Authority, that the state shall work in coordination and consultation with the Salton Sea Authority in the development and implementation of plans to restore the sea. So we have existing law that establishes the relationship between the Salton Sea Authority as the local body for dealing with matters at and around the sea in relationship with the state and its responsibilities under the QSA. I'm not aware of any other local body that has that same type of provision in law. I just wanted to bring that to the board's top of knowledge. A couple of other documents that I've included in there for your benefit. One is a 2014 memorandum of understanding that the Salton Sea Authority signed with the Department of Interior addressing the challenges at and around the sea. A lot of the responsibilities in there were largely subsumed by a later agreement between CNRA and the Department of Interior in 2016. There was a memorandum of understanding that was signed, but the 2014 memo still exists. It's scheduled to expire this year. And I think that it would be important for us to work with the Department of Interior to extend that document, and I will send them a letter of request. We may want to revisit the provisions in there in light of the commitments agreement between the state and federal government and local agencies, and how the authority can responsibly act to help meet the needs of the community and address the concern. And then lastly is a memorandum of understanding between the California Natural Resources Association and the authority. All of these documents between the state, the federal government, are forming documents, help guide our work, our direction to work with the partners to address the challenges at the sea. And I will leave it at there and allow any questions or comments.
Mr. Chair, I have a couple of questions.
Go ahead, Director Cardenas.
So I do appreciate these topics and the check-in in terms of our function and why we exist. You know, so often we hear from Supervisor Perez, why do we exist? Well, AB 71 clearly identifies the roles and responsibilities of the Salton Sea Authority and why we exist. And the work that I've seen come out of this body over the last couple of years is worthy of recognition. My inquiries and my questions are in relations to the possible increased conservation measures that are going to be taking place at the Salton Sea as a result to an additional 250,000 acre feet volunteer commitment. So my question to Mr. O'Dowd is, did the Salton Sea Authority participate in any of the analysis that was done on behalf of CRNA in understanding what those impacts are? So let me ask the question again. The question is, did the Salton Sea Authority participate in any of those discussions as it relates to the increased conservation measures that would be taking place along the Salton Sea?
So that's an excellent question, Director Cardenas. And I think the short answer is no. The longer answer, I believe, I've got outlined in item C on our agenda, which we will take a deeper dive into what role we should play in that regard. What I wanted to do in item B was establish what the law says and how we're informed on that. To in a conversation with one of my bosses, one of my board members, we were talking about, you know, the felt needs of the community. I apologize for diverging a little bit, but if you would indulge me. He asked the question, you know, we were discussing the conservancy and the issues of why such a conservancy was needed. And I think that there is a felt need in the community to have a seat at the table or have a seat at the table. And I've always looked at the authority as kind of a hub and the spoke of a wheel. But I was told that we are the table. And I think that after reviewing our documents, I think that's correct. I think we're a very big table and we need to invite Mr. Olmedo and others to come to the table and sit down with us and address these problems and use this organization as the tip of the spear to address these challenges. Some that you're pointing out. And I apologize for getting on my soapbox there, but.
Well, I would ask, Mr. Chair, that an agenda topic be considered, that the detailed report on behalf of the CRNA that addresses the increased conservation measures that were proposed, that the details of that report be shared as an agenda topic at our next board meeting. I believe there's been discussions between Mr. O'Dowd and CRNA, but I think it merits this full board and the public to have an understanding on how those conclusions were reached and the evaluation models that were used to determine those alleged impacts. So I am kindly asking that that topic be added as a potential agenda discussion at our next board meeting in terms of the detailed analysis that was done as it pertains to the increased conservation measures that are being proposed.
I do have that analysis. I do have an analysis in the board packet, and the state has offered to provide more detail on that.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, but I believe it's labeled as a high level, and that's not the way I operate.
Thank you, Director Cardenas. Any additional questions, comments from directors? Director Perez?
Just very quickly, I appreciate the comments made by my colleague from Imperial County. Thank you for those points that you made, and ultimately we do have to get to the bottom of what is the point of the conservancy, and why not the conservancy be under the Salton Sea Authority. We exist. We're called an authority for a reason. There's legislation, there's law. I just don't understand where this is going. And so I want to give our legislators the benefit of the doubt, those that are in support of that effort, the benefit of the doubt, and to sit down at the table and figure this out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director Perez. Any additional director comments? Okay, I'd just like to comment that to what you said, Director Perez, that we should sit down with the legislator. We have requested from staff numerous times to sit down with legislators introducing this particular item. And we are awaiting an appointment date so that we can sit down with them. If not, we'll just have to drive to them and knock on their door one of these mornings with a cup of coffee and have that conversation. Being no additional comments or questions, we will go on to agenda item C, oversight and analysis. Mr. O'Dowd.
Oh, this is not what I wanted to pull up. Let me stop sharing that. It's always a risk when you share your screen, you share the wrong screen. Note to self.
Yeah, I think we have learned some incredible lessons from Zoom on things that have been shared that should have never been shared.
Well, unfortunately, I didn't fall into
Things
that.
you cannot unsee.
All right, let's start. There, that'll do it. There. So I actually appreciate Dr. Lowe coming in to make his presentation. And again, I appreciate Mr. Omedo's comments. That's exactly the questions we need to ask. That's exactly the conversations we need to have. Many of us have been around this organization and dealing with these issues for years. And we still don't have answers to rudimentary questions that should have been answered a long time ago. And the fact that people live in fear about things that are others' responsibility to address and mitigate and educate the public on is problematic. And I think that this organization has a significant role to play in flushing that information out. I think that the core feasibility study is a framework that will force that conversation. The human health impacts associated with the long-range plan of the core feasibility study are not typically an integral part of a core feasibility study. So we've had preliminary conversations with the Corps about how to integrate those issues as a part of any long-term project that we design. But the question is, how do we evaluate the efforts now and going forward? I want to go, I want to start here. Let me get rid of it. So I looked at the state recently published, and Miguel, I'm not going to steal all of your thunder, but they recently published their long-term, their annual report, the SSNP annual report, which they're going to do a presentation on, and I'm not going to tell you the date because Miguel's got a report to give. But I looked at the numbers on there, and they were not inconsistent with what we've seen in the past. In last year's report, The state said that in 2021, they will address 2,255 acres. They will have addressed 2,255 acres. The 2022 report shows that, in fact, it's 1,277 acres. The 22 is 5755, and in this year's report, it's 2,800. And on. As the information shows, this is a very difficult challenge that the state has. I want to acknowledge that the team that's working on it, I work closely with them, and they do their very best in front of daunting challenges to deal with this. But the truth is, the numbers that are evaluated by the state agency are just their estimate of numbers. As we've discussed, as it relates to the impacts associated with the with any type of additional conservation measures, this board has advocated for an external review of that information. And I want to share something that I think is further supportive of that. This is what the state's model that they provided us relative to the conservation measures that would be implemented would look like. They're assuming there would be an additional 250,000 acre feet of water that would be reduced for 4 years, and then it would return to normal. So if you assume that all of a sudden we're going to stop receiving that 250,000 acre feet of water, and then all of a sudden it's going to start coming back, then I guess this is foundationally okay. But if there's the possibility that it's other than that, then what are the impacts associated with that? This is the exposed playa analysis that they showed. And what it shows is that there's 6,000 to 8,000 additional acres of exposed playa that will occur in 2028, and then things will start returning back to normal. These numbers are diverging. So if there's anything other than things absolutely returning back to normal, will they converge? Will they get larger? We know that under the 10-year plan, under the QSA, we're mitigating 30,000 acres of playa. And under the 250,000, the current assessment is that it's 6,000 to 8,000 acre feet. I think it could be right, but what if it's wrong? And what do we do if it's wrong? And how much money do we need if it's wrong? We had been in conversation, and I've discussed with this board, an engineering firm to do an evaluation of the state's work so that the community can know that there's a separate set of eyeballs looking at this stuff. And that at least when things are not as we thought they would be, we would have a baseline that's been tested to make those changes for. So my question to the board is, and I'm seeking direction, at what level should we involve ourselves in this process? I think that as the leader in the community, I think we have a responsible role to play. But I think that I would like that to come from my board rather than from me. So with that, I'll pause and entertain any direction you'd like to give.
Thank you, Mr. O'Dowd. Bringing it back to this body for any questions that might come up.
Mr. Chair, I would just acknowledge that I do appreciate the deeper dive that's being taken by the Salton Sea Authority in terms of understanding what the potential impacts are, and then also having at least a conversation around contingencies. But I think it merits that our community be engaged, that this board be engaged, and would be in support of a separate evaluation. My decision is based on the delinquency that exists right now on the existing 10-year plan. That plan, in terms of the acreage that were promised, is significant. There's delinquency in meeting those objectives. The 8-month vacancy journey that we experienced in terms of the assistant secretary is also something that's very concerning, especially when it comes to me. I represent both shoreline and fence line communities, and I continue to get numerous voicemails about public health. So again, from a conceptual standpoint, I am in support of the Salton Sea Authority moving forward with consideration for a separate evaluation as an opportunity to fact check these claims. But most importantly, it allows for on-ramps for our community to be part of that conversation. So again, I know this is not an action item, but if you're looking for direction, I would be in support of that separate analysis.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Additional director comments?
My only, Chairman, my only question is, or comment is, as I become educated on this, what is the product that would come out of the evaluation? And who would do that?
Yeah, so from what I understand, the product of this would be a fact checking. And I don't know whether we would use a EIR or another, a NEP or CEQA type organization, or whether we would go through a university to actually look at these figures. Because in our agenda, page 99 is a presentation of kind of a PowerPoint that we received that has some figures that if you start charting them out and you start putting them together, it leaves a lot to question, right? Where did these numbers come from? And are they correct? If they are correct, that is great. But at least me personally, I have concern that the expediency in which they came out after we called their attention to it, after the Bureau of Reclamation admitting that Salton Sea Authority had not been, Salton Sea had not been taken into consideration for mitigation as the decision was made for requests for water cutbacks or water conservation, right? So this to me, at least to me, it seems like an afterthought, and let's put these numbers together and this is what it would be. Well, joining the concern over a 10-year delinquency on a promise made, at least me, I have a lot of concern on the accuracy of these numbers. And I think that one of the things that we could do is through the Salton Sea Authority, its authority, the authority as a whole, not IID, not Coachella Valley Water, not Riverside, not Torres Martinez, not Imperial County, but its authority as the board as a whole, we should be able to, at least through the Bureau of Reclamation or the state of California, be able to, commission either a university or an organization that this is their profession to look at those numbers and say, yes, these projections are correct. Or say, no, this is where they are wrong. I rather spend $2-3 million now and know that they are correct than wait down the road to find out that they were incorrect. And so at the end of the day, I don't think these figures have been checked. I think that they have been put together for illustration purposes, but I don't think that the due process of an actual study has been done. That's my concern.
So the way we approach the problem, if this was a conventional undertaking, a project, it would require years of study, right? Both at the state and federal level.
NEPA and CEQA.
We do not have the time to implement those types of studies. What we are trying to do is be cooperating partners in the success of this important effort. But at the same time, we don't want to be victims of lack of evaluation and underwriting, both from the impacts and the resources to address those impacts. So the conversation we had with one engineering firm is, if you were advising your client in this situation and they weren't going to do a NEPA analysis, what approach would you take in giving them guidance on the risk associated with this implementation? And I think that the goal is, what I would see happening is we would find agreement, right, with the state, with our state and federal partners. Lisa Moore and I met with the Bureau and had with the Bureau back in DC, and we had this conversation, and they requested that I bring it to the principals work group and dealing with the what's it called, the commitments agreement. I'm sorry. And so I'm really looking for direction from this board to take to that principals work group that says this board believes that X, whatever is appropriate. And I think what X is whatever without creating more studies, you know, that don't produce value, but advising this board and the community as to, because everything, I think Secretary Crowfoot said that it's going to be adaptive management, right? So we're going to be tuning this engine while we're driving down the road, but we need to know what the starting point is. And I think that collectively we can figure out what the right diligence is to advise this board and the community to allow this to move forward on a successful basis.
I think if I may add a comment, and if I take a line out of AB 71, it says the bill would authorize the Salton Sea Authority to lead a restoration or to lead restoration funding and feasibility study. AB 71 gives the authority to lead and to authorize. And the fact that we weren't provided consultation, that we weren't at the table in terms of evaluating the impact of the increased conservation money or increased conservation measures, you know, is disheartening and concerning that we weren't there at the table and having those conversations. So I'm just asking that we follow state law, and state law under Assembly Bill 71 says that the Salton Sea Authority should be leading in those restoration efforts and the feasibility. And so I think the request for direction again has merit, and it's something that we should consider as a governing board that consists of 2 counties, 2 water districts, and a sovereign nation. So I am asking that we do move forward, but to your point, Director, I think we need greater detail, whether it is going to be a university, whether it's going to be an engineering firm, or you know, what that vehicle is going to look like. I just don't want to throw good money after something, you know, that may not produce those results. But that's just my opinion, and I'll be quiet after that.
It may be helpful. Ms. Moore does have a comment she'd like to make.
Yeah, so I hope that kind of helped
Yeah,
answer some
thanks.
of your,
Yeah, absolutely.
very passionate about this decision being made and an afterthought saying, oh yeah, well, here it is.
No, I
That just,
got you. Thank you.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Before we go to Ms. Moore, do we have any other directors online that would like to comment or ask questions on this?
No directors, but I do have Nathan White that would like to comment.
Okay, we will hold off there for a second before we go to public comment.
Lisa Moore would like to speak.
Yeah, so we will go to Lisa Moore real briefly, and then we will come to public comment, starting here in the room and then go to online. Ms. Moore? Going twice. We need to make sure that Ms. Moore is not muted. I can't see a full
Yeah, she
screen. on
probably
my-
can't figure out how to unmute her phone. She's dialed in. That's her on the bottom there.
*6 maybe? Or *9?
Well, we'll get back to you.
Okay, Ms. Moore, we'll get back to you. First, we'll go to a public comment then on this item. Okay, Ms. Moore.
Oh,
seems to
I-
have
sorry about
unmuted.
that.
Go for it.
Yay. Sorry about that. I can use this sort of as my federal report, but one factor I just wanted to share. So we did meet with the Bureau of Reclamation when Patrick was in town. We also met with our congressional delegation, and they raised questions with us about how do we know, right, that this is the right assessment, this is the right number. So it's really not only, right, they're sort of giving voice to what I think we're all, discussing right now. I think one important point really to think about in terms of having an assessment like that, we worked for many years at the authority to make the connection between what's happening on the Colorado River and the impacts to the Salton Sea, right? Back in 2019, right, there was an effort to remove all protections from our region, and we fought to maintain those protections and then to advocate for and secure the Corps of Engineers study, and because that will open up funding, federal funding for the Salton, but also to go after those IRA resources and put in place that $4 billion fund. Right. There's been an initial commitment of $250 million under that fund, and that's great. But we don't really know, right, if that's a sufficient number. If we don't have really more of an assessment about what's going to happen in the short term and the long term, it makes it very difficult to advocate for additional resources from that fund. And so, having a independent assessment of what the numbers look like, both for this kind of current discussion and also for 2026 and beyond for future conservation, it makes it possible really to advocate for those dollars. There's a lot of funding out there right now. That $4 billion fund, Interior has $8 billion for different positions. But it really helps to make it possible for those things happen, like really, when we don't really know and don't have an official assessment. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, we will go to a public comment. Anybody in chambers wishing to make public comment?
So not necessarily taking a position on the subject matter. I just want to make a general comment. But before I do that, I just did want to correct the record. I think it might have been Supervisor Perez might have been talking about some of the previous comment that I had made, but then it kind of rolled over into the Cadiz project. So I just want to clarify, we've taken no position on that, just for the record. On this subject matter, I just want to share that it's really difficult to kind of track and follow what everyone is doing, what the Salton Sea Authority is doing, what the state is doing. I want to think that everybody has the best intentions, but something isn't working. There's communication breakdowns along the way. There's the pressures of creating more open land for geothermal, for lithium, for other type of developments, and I get that. I know we're in enormous need to bring economic development. I mean, we're always, you can count on us 100% that we're always going to be looking out, making sure that the community doesn't carry the burden or the risk, right? So, we're an environmental justice organization. We're always going to do that. I get the sense that the federal government has in the past tried to support us, like through the Red Hill Bay project. It's so confusing as to why that was leveled. And I feel that SCH is a great example as to when IID really steps up and says, hey, we'll give you some land to work on, and we'll allow those agreements to happen. And I see it happening. I don't know where the water is going to come from. And I understand, I believe it or not, as some of you might think that I'm against agriculture, and I'm not. I mean, my family grew up as farm workers, we benefited from those jobs, but I don't think we're living at a time that we can allow the single water use for agriculture. We need to be able to take advantage of that water and recycle and recycle and recycle to create landscapes, to create economic development. Because if we don't do that, we're too vulnerable right now. And, it's unfortunate of how water isn't being made available. I think all of that concerns making sure that agriculture has priority over it, public health has priority over it, and that these projects get the water that they need to be able to solve this crisis. I get to go to Sacramento and DC. I always say this is what crisis looks like in this country. I'm very much in support of just trying to find solutions. And I feel that all of you are trying to probably do the same thing. I don't know how we fix that. I thank you for the invitation to be at the table. And so, is that my timer?
That is your time.
You're the timer.
Sure. But it sounds like you're landing it right on time.
Right.
I think
So,
you've
and
done
I
this
am, and I
before.
am. And I know that there's so much confusion around engagement. I know everybody's trying to do like engagement, and I get that. We're all trying to do that. But we have to also understand that there are a lot of barriers in our community: poverty, transportation, language barriers, cultural barriers. Sometimes my health team, assesses it as social determinants when it comes to health. But I think it's very similar when it comes to any subject matter. So, but I'm happy to be part of the conversation and try to be part of the solution. I do want to apologize. I think it was Dr. Lowe. I've spoken many times with him as well. I don't mean to come down, and blame him for the good work that he does. But Supervisor Kelly, you know very well that, UCR made some decisions that if we weren't to pull together as a community, we'd probably be seeing everything happening in Riverside. And I'm not talking about East Coachella. I'm talking about Riverside proper out there in the university. And so that's where I'm coming from on that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have online, Mr. Septon?
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to comment. I do think it's important that the Salton Sea Authority, as the local authority on the Salton Sea, should be looking at the numbers that the state presents as the impacts of water reductions. And I think that there is good reason to believe that those numbers were hurriedly put together and are not accurate. And I think it's also even more important to look at the reality that the 250,000 per year acre foot reduction for 4 years may not end in 4 years, because the over allocation of the Colorado River has been going on for more than 20 years. And therefore the need to reduce water use on the river in order to keep the dam system and all the canals and everything that's dependent on the Colorado River, that need is not going to go away, because this is a structural imbalance between the amount of water that's been over allocated to all kinds of users all the way up and down the river versus the amount of water that is really sustainable in the river itself, and the fact that things are gradually warming up and we are seeing those impacts on the river and the entire Southwest. So it's important that the Salton Sea Authority should know what the challenge looks like on the Colorado River supply. And in order to do that, it's important that the Salton Sea Authority should have an independent set of numbers. And I just want to say that if you hire an engineering firm, make sure it's not the same firm that produced the state's numbers. I think we know who that firm probably is. Make sure it's somebody else. And if you go to university, that's great. Don't go to UC Santa Cruz because they produced a bad report. Find reliable sources of information. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any additional comments online?
Yes, we have Nathan White.
Mr. White?
Hi, thank you so much. I wanted to kind of reiterate some of what Mr. O'Dowd said, as well as Mr. Cardenas, is that, there needs to be somebody guarding the hen house here. Like the state, it seems they have their priorities, but they're behind the 8 ball here. And it always wants to have a third party arbiter of the information that's coming in and getting distributed to the public. Just in my own experience, as I mentioned earlier, one of our projects was excluded from the long range planning committee for non-water importation for our South Lake project, but there wasn't really any explanation or information provided to us why it was excluded, not even a confirmation email that it was excluded. So the communication is really lacking from the state level. And I'm sorry to say that because I respect everybody there. But I really respect this group because you are representatives of the community and you have these public meetings and you're actually taking the input and making action on it. I haven't really seen the same from the state, which is kind of a little bit concerning. To the larger projects and even the smaller scale projects, there is an opportunity for people, and I'll bring about the Desert Shores project again. We pretty much had the permits approved. We were ready to get construction started with whatever minor meager money that we could accomplish. But, there's an issue with grading permits and, us as small individuals, the Eco Media Compass and me volunteering my time, we're not really able to fund projects that are community driven. And that could be all the way up to the scale of water importation. I'm pretty confident that money into water importation or a South Lake project, but there needs to be some conduit. I wanted to thank Ryan Kelly that I believe about 5 years ago that initiated Desert Shores. They came up with an idea for a small grant program where property owners can do dust mitigation, things like that can get projects in the ground quickly. We initiated a pre-application meeting for our South Lake demonstration project with the Imperial County Development Services. And we intend to keep moving forward with that as a private developer, but it'd be great to have a conduit like the Salton Sea Authority that's double checking all the scientific data of the California Natural Resources Agency and really the feasibility that came out. I'll just have to mention the project that we have for water importation, we're calling Tres Mares, is $1 billion project, and it builds a lake almost the same size as the Salton Sea in Mexico. It doesn't require any desalination, and it can start adding water into the Colorado River Basin, which is still in severe drought. $1 billion package didn't pass UC Santa Cruz judging criteria because the restoration of the Sea of Cortez was deemed a fatal flaw. Not that it would be our restoration project restores that whole region, but we just want, and I'll request again, the Salton Sea Authority to recommend projects move forward to the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as the Bureau of Reclamation, as well as many other government agencies, and not just take the feasibility of UC Santa Cruz on its face, because some of those assertions were speculative and opinion-based, where they said our one comment, and the reason it didn't go to the fatal flaw review was because we think it's going to take too long to get a permit. And they're talking about, thank you. I appreciate that.
Madam Clerk, any additional?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then I will bring it back to this body. Did you have any comments? Bring it back to this body for direction.
Just want to reiterate my support for us moving forward beyond the exploratory concept here and bringing some action before this body in terms of the appropriate evaluation of those impacts or supplemental evaluation of those impacts. So I'd be in support of your recommendation, Mr. Ordell.
And I would support that as well. And I'd actually like to perhaps go ahead and put a dollar figure to it. I don't know what a study or a budget to create that kind of verification would be. But I would like to perhaps get some numbers that we could include in there, including the cost to administer such study. And so whether it ends up being 2 million, 3 million, from projects that I have seen through the county, CEQA and NEPA, and I know that this would be done in a very expedient and fast way. So it has a tendency to drive up a bit the cost. But I think that should also, that recommendation that comes back, or that recommendation that is made should have a dollar figure. And I will trust you to, come up with that kind of number that you think it's within reason.
So if I'm hearing you, what I will do is I will draft a letter for the executive committee to sign, which articulates these concerns and requests with a dollar figure that would support this effort.
Correct. A realistic dollar figure that we know will get the job done.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I have to excuse myself to be in Bakersfield at 6 p.m., but Director Dockstetter's in charge.
Okay, well, the way you drive, you have another 2 hours.
I'm pulling a traitor.
All right.
I'll see you guys.
Director.
Thank you. Great work today, folks.
Safe travel. Yeah, safe travels. We'll go on to reports. Lisa, you want to continue your report since we're starting with federal
I think,
activities?
she texted me. I think that substantively, her report has been covered with the conversations that we've had.
All right, then we'll go on to the Bureau of Reclamation, Jeremy Brooks.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Jeremy Brooks, Bureau of Reclamation. I'll be real quick, recognizing kind of the time here. I did want to mention that with Dr. Lowe's study, there was that came out of Congressman Vargas's office. They carved $500,000 out last year for that project to move forward, and that was just executed as a financial assistance agreement with Reclamation a couple of months ago. So that was something that we've been working with UC Riverside on for about 8 months now. So I'm happy to see that one move forward. And then just in terms of updates, not a lot, other than it's kind of heads down trying to work with the state and the Torres Martinez tribe to obligate the 22 million that is tied to the commitments agreement. The expectation is that we will have that obligated in the state and the tribe's hands by the end of the fiscal year. So we're probably looking August of this year. And that's my update.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Going on to state reports, Mr. Gonzalez.
Directors, how are you? It's good to see you, and good early afternoon. I will focus my comments on what the directors asked a little bit earlier regarding the Conservancy and the various issues that, you know, the Conservancy or creation thereof would arise with respect to the authority, with respect to the QSA mitigation obligations. The long short is that everything's on the table. Those items have not been discussed or determined yet. With respect to the Conservancy, language was added to the bill that was introduced by Mr. Padilla, but it was done for the sole purpose of getting the bill referred to committee. Everything that's within that bill that was introduced is effectively on the table. What I will go do right after this meeting is I'm gonna go and knock on the senator's door and ask him when these stakeholder engagements are gonna be taking place. Because what they conveyed to us when this measure was first being introduced was that it was the senator's desire to have a consensus-driven process where every one of these items would be tackled and a consensus would be gathered, and then those items would then be put forward, and that would make up the Conservancy. So I will go and press them for when those conversations are going to start taking place. But yeah, as of right now, the bill is. It basically still, even though it has substantive language, the language is all on the table. There isn't anything set in stone. And we certainly have an opportunity to mold and chime in. In terms of the process, the bill is likely to be heard in Policy Committee in April. And then after that, it will be sent to a Fiscal Review Committee. And this is really going to be the big hurdle for the bill. Because the state is in such a deteriorating financial position that seems to get worse by the day, the bill is going to have a hard time exiting that financial review because it costs money. But in the event that the bill does advance from that review, it will then go before the full Senate, and then we'll have to repeat the process in the Assembly. So there definitely will be an opportunity for us to engage. And like I said, I'll go over and get a sense of exactly what that timeline is going to look like for those stakeholder conversations that they promised, you know, that they conveyed to us would be taking place to drive and develop this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
Going on to the state of California, Mr. Hernandez appearing in person. Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon. Well, yeah, I guess I got something else to say, perhaps a little bit more detail regarding the new position for Assistant Secretary for Salton Policy. Yesterday, Governor Gavin Newsom announced and is pleased to have appointed Samantha Arthur to serve as the Assistant Secretary for Salton Policy for the Natural Resources Agency. Ms. Arthur has served as Working Lands Director for Audubon, California since 2019. And once she was also the Conservation Project Director there from 2016 to 2019, and a Conservation Project Manager from 2014 to 2016. She's expected to join the team or be on board, fully on board by late April. So we'll hear from her then. And that's great news. On a personal note, I think that even though the program kept moving full steam, getting the long range plan going, continuing on public engagement, multiple opportunities for people to continue to chime in into our projects or processes. We definitely need a key lead in this position, and I personally believe that Ms. Arthur will be that person. So happy to work under her in the future. So okay, perfect. So next on my list, I have the annual report, which was uploaded to our website just yesterday, and we'll happily share with the rest of the members of this board. And we'll also have a public workshop on April 20th. We haven't fully announced it just yet. Actually, we're gonna have an e-newsletter go out with all this information, including the new assistant secretary for Salton Sea policy, and just some dates that we got coming up. We also have the engagement committee. We're meeting on the 3rd. Just it's more of a focused conversation to prep for that April 20th workshop. And also our partners at the water boards have announced their annual Salton Sea workshop. This year is going to happen in May. It's a 2-day event. It's going to be a 2-day event here in Imperial County at IBC, May 16 and 17. And this will be going out today via the SSMP newsletter. So I invite you all or those joining online to subscribe if you haven't, to get these dates. Of course, they're going to be on our website as well. And yeah, I'll keep it there. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. We will now go on to the Salton Sea Recreation Area update. Mr. Corteri, are you online today? There we go. Good morning.
Morning, everybody. How's everybody? I hope doing well today. Thank you for the opportunity and good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to update the board on current operations at the Salton Sea Recreation Area. As with always, our park is continuing to focus on our daily baseline operations. We're pleased to operate all day use areas. Campgrounds and our visitor center are open during this time of the year. Attendance continues to be strong at Salton Sea State Recreation Area and actually has picked up over the last couple months. In February alone, we saw an increase of about 1,700 visitors at the State Recreation Area, and those increases were experienced both in day use and camping. We had over 1,200 visitors increase over prior years in day use and over 500 camper increases in the camping. It truly is exciting to visit the Salton Sea State Recreation Area at this time of year to see the numerous families, individuals, local residents, as well as tourists of the area enjoying the many areas that are available. Lastly, I'd like to share that we are currently recruiting additional team members for our state recreation area operations. We have opportunities in the visitor center, interpretive opportunities, as well as entrance station opportunities. If anybody is interested, please feel free to contact the state recreation area directly. I thank you for the opportunity to address the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may be offered.
Thank you, sir. Seem to be no questions coming. We will go on to local. I believe that we have Mr. Juan de Lara perhaps online for the Salton Sea Action Committee.
Juan de Lara?
Oh, that was a tease,
there.
wasn't it?
No one.
Okay, no Juan. We will go to our executive director.
Mr. President, it's been a long day and a lot longer than I thought it would be. I'll be brief. I do have a tour set up for the Association of California Water Agency Region 9 for next Monday. We start at CVWD at 8 a.m. with stops at Desert Shores, the SCH project. This is a secret to the participants, but we're going to pull over on the side of the street and pick up 60 date shakes in Westmoreland, drive over to the mud pots, down to Bombay Beach. We're going to have a presentation by Scott Slater at the North Shore Yacht Club about water rights and things of that nature. And then we're going to head back to CVWD, getting back at 5:30 in the evening. I'm particularly excited about this opportunity because I think it's foundational to the type of work that we should be doing in conjunction with our partners and stakeholders. I was approached recently by the state to, about an opportunity to participate with Audubon in putting together these types of educational opportunities. And I think that with the environmental justice group, with the schools, with the cities, and otherwise, I think if we look prospectively, we can develop tours and strategies that will help the right people understand the right answers to the right questions as we move forward. And I would be even more excited about it if I had my new public relations person on board to assist me in this regard. But when we get that up and running, we're going to be cooking with natural gas. I think I'll stop there and entertain any questions that the board might want to have. I do want to thank Supervisor Kelly for joining me in the meeting with the Desert Shores community. I think that was a good restart. Mr. John Gay is involving himself in the process, and I think he's going to be a tremendous asset in ensuring the success of that project.
Thank you, Mr. O'Dowd. Do we have any questions from directors? Okay, being none, thank you very much for that report. And we will be adjourning this meeting. Our next meeting will be at the Coachella Valley Water District on Thursday, April 27th at 10 a.m. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Miguel.
Yeah.